IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Wire Talks. I'm Siddharth Bhajia. Internet freedom has become a topic of worldwide debate. In India, we have seen growing government interference in the digital domain. The internet has been shut down at will. Digital news platforms are being threatened, and stringent new regulations have been imposed on independent digital news sites. What does all this indicate, and how can citizens resist this encroachment on their rights? Our guest today is Mishi Chaudhary, a technology lawyer and online civil liberties activist with a pretty long record of raising these issues. Mishi is the legal director at the Software Freedom Law Center in Delhi, which he founded, and practices in India and New York. The center has conducted landmark litigation cases, petitioned the government of India on freedom of expression, and campaigned for WhatsApp and Facebook to fix a feature of their platform which has been used to harass women in India. I mean, that's self-evident what WhatsApp does and how it is an instrument used by people to spread hate and rumors, etc., etc. So these need to be curbed. This is now definitely an issue that is worth discussing. She will discuss these and other contentious issues of the government's attempts to control the internet in the country, and also what is happening on this front across the world. Welcome to the Wire Talks, Mishi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Siddharth.
First of all, tell us what the center does.
I came to the US to start another law practice here, and I spent a lot of time working on matters of policy, law, and technology. And it was very evident that there was a very robust civil society in the United States talking about user rights whenever there was a discussion about technology and new laws which were coming up. And when I looked back at the country of my birth, the absence of such an organization was glaring in my face. There was one organization which was just beginning to come into existence, but they were going to be more research-based.
When was this, and, if I may ask?
That is...
Sorry, I have to ask you. When was...
This is 2008.
Okay.
Early on.
Yeah.
So Sunil was putting together Center for Internet and Society to do research, but there wasn't anybody who was thinking about advocacy and also lawyers trying to do tech policy. And that is when I asked a few people, a lot of friends for advice, raised some money, and started the process to put the center together. But it took time, the usual stuff, which if a nonprofit has to be started, it doesn't come into existence right away. And so we first launched officially in March of 2010, although we'd been doing some work prior to that. So the center defends digital freedoms as the motto and the mission is. And the idea mostly is to bring together lawyers, economists, journalists, and engineers who make technology to protect civil liberties online. That is free speech and expression, privacy, data protection, software patenting, free and open source software, free culture. So it does three things. It does original research and maintains data about various developments, such as the free speech tracker or the internet shutdowns tracker. The second thing is it represents a lot of citizens who either have suffered, have been either there are criminal proceedings against them, or they have some other issues in relation to online civil liberties. And third, it does is public education and awareness. So there's a lot of advocacy work involved in that. We work very closely with the legislature as well as the executive, participating in the processes so that the policies or the various rules and laws that they enact, they also take into account user rights And it's not just the business interest or the government interests which are accounted for.
Yeah, at that stage, and even really now in fact, things have gone a little worse, if I may use that. The executive at that stage did not know too much about these things. There were not too many civil servants, politicians who understood this new beast called the internet. Though, of course, there must be lawyers were also, I'm sure, groping in the dark about this.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly citizens, it had not struck them that I could resist, as you know. So things were appearing. Twitter wasn't that bad a domain and a social platform at the time.
Yeah.
But WhatsApp, soon after, by 2012, 13, it had become really an anonymous platform to spread the vilest rumors, and it's only gone back to us. So did you get questions or cooperation? I mean, the people said, hey, we don't know anything. Please tell us. What did civil servants say and politicians?
Yeah, that does take me, I'm going to age myself here, obviously. But every time, because I was spending and dividing time between Delhi and New York, I heard the entire thing from what exactly does software freedom mean? Why are you talking about free culture and licenses? From that to having being questioned by the IT and the law minister in that government, that time UPA was in power and Mr. Sibal was the minister. I had known him as a lawyer, but when we started to talk about it, they all thought that these were some American concepts being pushed down unnecessarily when simple things mattered. So questions did exist a lot. Cooperation, I would say, came mostly from states like Telangana and Kerala, where there was at least a deep understanding of why technology mattered and the politics around it also. But it was, as you rightly said, very novel for everybody. It was very, in fact, what is now become a big part of the discussion in the past 3-4 months in India, the IT rules. We went through the same round in 2011 also with the prior government, which had taken us to the courts, the Supreme Court that time. So right from asking that this is an esoteric topic, India doesn't need it, we have everything in order, to being told that you're an American agent. I have stories about going to Meitei and somebody saying that she must be American because she can't speak Hindi. And from then onwards, I started to ensure that that was the only language I used whenever I went to talk about technology. To being told all the time that there was some interests that we had which were not apparent. I think we've heard it all. There was a time when we were resisting Facebook, so against Free Basics by Facebook, that internet.org. I would say that we've had all kind of allies. Some are natural allies, and sometimes we are fighting against our allies, and sometimes with them. But that also shows us, because we are so committed to the mission as well as the issues and the values, that sometimes the government likes us, sometimes they don't like us, and it's the same for the companies as well.
You know, Mishi, while you were talking, I began thinking back to those times, but also pre-basics, was thwarted in the end, to where we have come today. And you have petitioned the government. I don't know what that means, but you have petitioned the government and you have campaigned against the WhatsApp and Facebook. And have these efforts yielded any concrete results?
Great question. So I will say that when we say we petition the government, the first thing as we identify issues is first to do a legal as well as a technological analysis. We have a tech team. They will tell us how the technology works so that people can't fool us by the fact, oh, it's too complicated. We have a legal team who will analyze. And then we talk to our economists or journalists who will give us their inputs based on their expertise. Then what we try to do is engage with the executive and try to understand what or why they are doing it, get their intentions. Sometimes that results into some kind of changes in their policies, which we saw in software patents. We were able to get them a lot of data from US, from Europe, as well as empirical data in India, which was able to sway them to make a different change and stick to what the law was. Sometimes when that doesn't work, and we will send an open letter or a petition to the government to say, this is our analysis, this is what you are doing. And we've seen some amount of at least difference which is made. I will say it started with at least inviting a lot of civil society to talk about these issues and have a say in the consultation process. Sometimes, like recently, SFLC petitioned the government to say that the CoWIN platform was only in English when it was launched. And then they said, okay, we will be launching it in 14 languages. Then we petitioned about last year, Arogya Setu, which didn't have a proper privacy policy or did not have the source code, which was open sourced, so that everybody could examine what they were doing with data. And then we petitioned, and that resulted into at least some kind of a success, because they did announce the open sourcing of the code. They did make that change. SFLC, because of the pandemic, has also pivoted to talk about open access to the technology which goes in vaccines. And that's when our second thing comes up. When we could not reach any kind of success, there are a lot of people who are impacted and they reach out the center. Then we move the courts. Like in this case, we moved the Kerala High Court, where what we wanted was what India was saying at the world stage, that there needs to be a TRIPS waiver of patents, but also a technology transfer. But India was not doing it and still is not doing it nationally. So what we wanted was that ICMR and Bharat Biotech should do a tech transfer to 19 other organizations who have the capacity to manufacture human vaccines. So we moved the court. That case is still pending. In fact, it was listed. It is listed for tomorrow. So similarly, these IT rules, last time when the UPA government, Mr. Sibal, tried to do something similar, censorship by proxy, that time we represented another party and went to the Supreme Court. And that is the Shreya Singhal online judgment.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So we were petitioners there also. And that was, of course, concrete success.
Oh, that was quite a success, yes.
Yeah, and our board members were very active in the Aadhaar litigation. So the KS Puttuswamy one judgment, which is also right to privacy judgment, we were a big part of that case as well. So I would say it's a mixed bag. Free Basics by Facebook obviously was another success.
Yeah, but you know, the kind of success at that time with Free Basics, and as you know, WhatsApp and Facebook are under pressure worldwide to stop giving a platform to hate speeches, and only after the stable doors are shut does Twitter take Mr. Trump off, and here it started flagging. But do these large organizations react when organizations like you or anybody else goes to them?
No,
because
sorry,
I mean, I'm wanted to just add that WhatsApp is still what it was many years ago.
Absolutely. And I will not say that I am, or the center is naive enough to think that we have right now so much sway that just because what we are going to say is going to have a large impact. With that caveat, I will also say, because we are representing a lot of things which the users are talking about, and we do have the problem of being in the vanguard, identifying the issues earlier than many people would do it, mostly because it's our job, that's it. And we spend so much time thinking and talking about these issues, we identify them early on. Now what happens is that there is at least a little more movement that when our organization, and we work with definitely many other organizations, we always try to figure out who are our natural allies, but also the other people who may be suffering and who may have seen some of this stuff, like what you mentioned about weaponization of social media by political parties. I think we had started to talk about it in the run-up to the 2014 elections. We had already watched that. And then 2 years in 2016, there were the UP elections. And we'd seen a lot of data which had come out about what you just said, using WhatsApp to appeal to the subconscious mind of a voter and to only send them messages which were in their language or tailor-made for them to start and issues of mostly communal issues or something else which would try to ignite some kind of a pain point. I will say that from when I started to where we are today, things have definitely moved. And because we are now representing a lot of user rights, we definitely have better engagement with the companies. To say they change their products based on what we are saying, that doesn't happen so far. I think we also have to go through the hoops of policy teams and the legal teams to get to the product teams where the engineers are sitting. And this is a good example of, I will say that WhatsApp, because it allows people a lot of times to be added to groups without their explicit permission and express permission. And this was happening to a lot of big journalists in India, where they were being added to groups where then their families and their ad hominem attacks were being made, their personal details, which is doxing, that was happening in all of these WhatsApp groups. So I will say we have reached a place where we can have a dialogue because they know that a lot more users are aware of their rights. But to say that they will change their products based only on what we are saying, it will be naive because it goes against the business model of such companies.
Okay. So, Mishi, now we are in 2021. Much has changed. Last 2 or 3 years, 2 years especially under the umbrella of the lockdown, when people are preoccupied with a whole lot of other things, the government has managed to push through rules. They are not acts. They've not been discussed in Parliament, but they've been pushed forward. And it's almost a fait accompli for most people. Of course, some people have gone to court. But how do you see what is happening in India? It's gone into overdrive, and it started with shutting down the internet almost arbitrarily. And now Twitter, OTT platform, digital news organizations, you got to get movies cannot be made on anti-national, so many other things. How do you see the government? What do you see? Is it part of a pattern? Is it going to get worse? Is there a design? What is it?
So I will say that a lot of what has happened, at least in the past 2-3 months, is distraction from what the real issues are. We've seen the failure of the government in handling of the pandemic, and all the government seems to be much more concerned about the mentioning of the Indian variant on social media instead of tackling the existence of that variant in the hospitals or in the society. So first, I see it as a lot of public theater. The second thing I will say is that despite the claims of ease of doing business in India, as well as having the technological talent here, India has a lot of China envy. And there are enough of domestic parties who would like India to have the same way that shut out the American competition, but have Indian equivalents. Now, I personally think that competition is good for users. The more choices we have in terms of social media platforms, the better it is for users. But I also understand that there are a lot of domestic players who are much more pliant to the government requests for data and harassment of the users than the American platforms are. So the users are stuck between a rock and a hard place. The third thing I will say is that India shut down internet 129 times in 2020. We are in 2021, and 21 times they've already shut the internet down. And the only other countries who shut internet as much as India does I would say, are Uganda, Belarus, Yemen, etc. And they also, the stark contrast between the numbers is such that it is no wonder that India is called the internet shutdown capital of the world. So my view is the government wants to control the narrative a lot. This is the government which came into power riding on the success of using social media and thereafter also weaponizing it. But now when the companies are not following the orders, the ad hoc orders, not the judicial orders, they would like to control the access of information, free flow of information, with no regard for user rights.
So, Mishi, I think this point that you mentioned, that it's a distraction because of government failure. Now, this point is being made repeatedly in the last few months, and but the distraction is going to cost us, the citizens, as well as these platforms. I mean, I speak as a part of a digital news media. And just yesterday, I think even the big papers went to court, and we have gone to court. But it's going to cause a lot of destruction on the way.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I think that one of the major issues is that these rules, which are the subordinate legislation, and as you earlier said, that have not been even subordinate legislation is not really discussed in the parliament. But what happens is that they are tabled in the parliament. And if within 30 days, some member of parliament can move to annul them or edit them. Parliament hasn't met since these rules were introduced. So of course, that possibility still stays. And a lot of people have moved to the court. In fact, our law center has also moved to the court representing free and open source community. The problem, what has happened is they've tried to jam the entire kitchen sink into these rules. There is no business of putting whether it is online current newspapers such as yours or the OTT platforms like Netflix or Amazon Prime in these IT rules. Jurisdictionally, that's incorrect. And also the fact that even the INB ministry did not even conduct the consultations, which at least these rules pretended to do. At least some of that we went through the motions. Now, I would say the companies themselves, not the domestic ones, but the American platform companies are big enough now and they need to be regulated, but they can't be regulated through subordinate legislation and jamming everything into one kind of regulations and rules. Second, unrelated entities have all been clubbed together, like as you said, that the online newspapers as well as OTT platforms, along with all these social media intermediaries. That has happened. Another complete misstep. The third is there is a lot of desire to regulate the companies on data collection, on antitrust issues, but we need separate kind of provisions and laws for that. That is not happening here. Next point I would make is that world over, everybody is trying to figure out how to handle this problem of misinformation and disinformation. Nobody, no government has tried to make companies' employees criminally liable for somebody else's content on their platform, like India has done. So truly, you're right about the fact that a lot of damage is going to be done. A lot of money is going to be spent on litigation. Time is going to be wasted, but we continue to see this kind of a public theater which the ministry is going on. I have not seen in my legal career, and I've spoken to a lot of people who have much more experience than me, that instead of responding in courts, now everything is done by letters. And the last point I will make is there is disingenuity on both parties. The government is not releasing the frequently asked question and standard operating procedures, which it is bound to do and obligated to do. The companies are still saying they're only sales offices, and the users are forced to watch from the sidelines as so much of damage continues to happen.
So basically what you said towards the end is that the user, whether a news reader, consumer, or with those on the social platform, or those who are subscribing to Netflix and Prime and all that, the user is not only, I think, watching from the sidelines, but is going to be rolled over in the process, because the large social media organizations so far have shown very little inclination to stop hate speech, anonymous allegations. I know of a number of people whose lives have been upended because of some anonymous allegation somewhere, but they are not going to change. And this heavy-handedness, this kind of throwing everything at everyone who the government thinks needs regulation, this heavy-handedness is going to not help the consumer either, the citizen either. So it is a citizen who's going to suffer.
Absolutely. I think that is why the problem of the platforms, as you rightly pointed out, is the business model, which is surveillance capitalism. The more you and I spend time on their platforms, the more engagement it creates, the more data about our profiles they can collect and then use it for targeted advertising, which is the only existing successful business model many of these platforms have. The point about that they haven't taken real action here is that they're all struggling in different jurisdictions, what they can and cannot do. I will say that it is true that for the longest time, they did not take much action. It's only in June of 2020, Twitter even started to label Donald Trump's tweets as manipulated media or factually incorrect. And it's only much later that the January 6th attack had to happen when Trump lost his account on Facebook and Twitter. I can't tell you how nice it is and how quiet it is that he's not on any of these platforms here. So, but you don't get up every day to think, oh my God, what has he said today and which war are we part of?
Yes, you went through that for 4 years, all of us.
Yeah, exactly. So having said that, I will say that coming down so heavily on these platforms and not being genuine about it. Let's talk about the example here. So the IT rules say that any of these social media intermediaries, which have more than 5 million registered users, they must tell their user that you cannot put anything which is patently false, and then you will have to inform the users. Now, in this case, which has been happening in India, there's a BJP spokesperson, and their Twitter, after consulting its own fact checkers and whoever, determines that that's what's happening, and they label it. This is exactly what Rule 3B10 require them to do. Once they do it, what does the government do? Now, the government starts and steps into a process which is between one user and Twitter, a private business. Let's not forget that these are all private businesses. We may be using them to express our fundamental rights, but they still are private businesses. Government steps in and says you must take down this content. Why? Because right now the target is a ruling party functionary. And the entire political process kicks in where the opposition and the ruling party are fighting. But if labeling is not the way, or if there is no other way, that if any action which will be taken by these companies will be an issue, then we are also telling them that solve this problem of misinformation, disinformation, fake news, but we will tie your hands to the back, because you can't touch anybody who is politically powerful enough. If we are going to say that, then let's just decide that as a society, we are exactly doing what the results here are. And let's not pretend that, fake news is a big problem. But when anybody wants to solve that problem and it turns out that it leads to a political party, then we don't want to solve that problem. That's where our issues are. Our issue is not that these companies should not be asked to do more. They definitely should be asked to do more. In fact, our laws on right to privacy should be tightened so that these companies cannot collect as much data about us as they do. But that doesn't mean that we try to jam it all into one kind of laws, and those are also selectively enforced.
So in fact, you mentioned about, the selective approach. You mentioned about the spokespersons for the party. If you remember, there was a lot of hate accounts from the ruling dispensation, and they may not have been government people, but still they were promoters of the Hindutva and other, and they were members of the party on Facebook. And Facebook knew about it and kept quiet for years or months.
Absolutely. And it was only journalists from publications who are independent publications who were talking about this. Some of international journalists started covering this. And look what we see, how they are treated. And also under these rules, now we have something which they know that the independent journalism is alive in India because of a lot of people now being online. And they are the independent ones. The traditional media is doing what it is doing. And now we have these kind of rules being said, you will have to do all of the various code of ethics, etc., which we are trying to give you in the name of a grievance redressal mechanism. And it is all being said that, oh, the poor citizens, the poor users have nowhere to go. Now, I will say that one of the major problems with these large platforms, whether it is Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's WhatsApp or Google, let's not forget YouTube. There is no magic dust on YouTube, and a lot of nonsense goes around there as well. Now, all of these people, in order to run as a business or whatever interests motivated them, they were also giving a free hand to the ruling party, but also everything else is being done in such darkness that we are all left out to wonder, when will my Twitter account be taken down? Will there be a post which I will put on Facebook which will not actually reach the people it is supposed to reach? If we say anything about the party, will somebody have all my data and police will show up on my doors? All of these parties, all of these companies have also been complicit to some extent. And that is why what we want from them is far more transparency in how do you actually do this content moderation. But again, I will repeat is that the problem is there are so many issues with the companies. There are issues with the government, but each of them is picking up whatever the weakness of the other is, ostensibly to show that they're doing it to protect us. I'm always told that women need protection. We're doing it for women protection. We're doing it for children. We're doing it for terrorism. But if we go a little deeper, it's not about all of these categories because those crimes were always addressed. It is much more about controlling information flow. Otherwise, why would we have newspapers and OTT platforms also jammed in?
So finally, what should I as a citizen do? I mean, short of switching off my Twitter account, not watching online films and stop reading, perhaps stop even sending emails and get onto WhatsApp and go back to, shall we say, 1996. What else can I do as a citizen to safeguard A, my rights, B, my privacy?
Well, I don't know, Siddharth, which hat you are wearing. And I know you have a good collection of hats. I was half expecting you to show up in a hat.
No, here I'm a citizen. I'm Mr. Citizen. So there are no mysterious hats and everything one has to say, if I may just add a personal note, everything I say is out there in a public domain. But I have been hit by anonymous allegations, as have my colleagues and as have several women journalists. So what should I as a citizen do short of the things that I mentioned?
As a citizen, I will say is that right now, we need to press for the companies to get more transparent about exactly how they moderate content. We need them to come up and press them harder about exactly the kind of problems you are saying, that there are accounts which make anonymous kind of allegations. They dox people and the safety is then threatened. We need to ask for more transparency. We also need to ask for better products. And otherwise, we have at least some options to move from one kind of platform to another kind of platform. I understand all our friends and family are on, like, for example, on WhatsApp. So it becomes a little difficult to say, everybody, let's move to Signal. But I think it's one-time migration and each one can teach one. And then one doesn't have to worry every day about what's happening, whether my data is being leaked or a policy is being changed or they are ratting me out to the government. So one is we can educate ourselves a little bit more. We can demand more transparency. And we can use their platforms on them itself to say we are asking more transparency and we want more accountability from you. The second thing I will say is against our own government, we have fundamental rights which can be enforced. We can't enforce them against the private parties, but against the government, we can definitely do. Not every citizen I'm going to expect them to be leaving and living. There is a lot more to life than all of these problems. But there are motivated groups like ours, like several others also, who are either going to court to fight this out. So you can support them, you can amplify their voices and hold the government accountable. If there are small businesses, everybody or other people who have the resources, they themselves can go to the court, they should go to the court. If nothing else, they can at least speak out in public about this. If many of the people, if none of this really is easy to understand, they do understand one thing is that they would like the freedom to watch in the privacy of their homes, whatever they choose to watch on a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or a Hotstar. They pay for that service. It's not free broadcast from the government. And they should be able to allow to educate themselves, to expose their minds to anything the world is presenting. And it is really a shame that me sitting in America can watch some other form of a TV series which was made in India, but my Indian counterpart, my friends and family in India have to watch something which patronizes them and treats them like little kids. It's the same thing of going back to there is no kissing between adults, there is only two flowers meeting kind of a thing. I think they know that they want that freedom. They also know that it is online independent media which will at least give us the correct information, even for matters like the pandemic or COVID-19 itself, and we need to support that media. So I will say, educate yourself, speak out, use these platforms to hold them accountable, support the people who are holding the government accountable, and it's support doesn't mean only donations to these people or subscriptions to these people. Support also means using your voice to talk about those matters and just demanding better rights as well as better products. You asked me a question early on, whether any of the companies or governments ever listen to us. I think if there are many more users who speak and whose voices are amplified, then there is pressure about the idea that you can't make deals between two fat cats, which is business and the government, and ignore the users. This is my job and our mission. We will continue to fight. And the more people who can join this fight, I think the better chances we will have at success.
So finally, Mishi, I got the impression that you said that the government has done all this because it wanted to distract from its failures and all that, and everything has been lumped in under one category. So that shows a certain haphazardness, a certain, now there are challenges to the court, which we don't know which way it'll go, and the challenges are only increasing. But what do you think is, if the government has a long-term or mid-term strategy, what do you think it is, if it all has?
So let me clarify. What I meant was this entire Métis versus Twitter drama or the public theater, that I think is a distraction. But these rules, they had started to draft them from 2018. At that time, the OTT platforms as well as the online news publishers, they were not part of the discussion. And the idea was that time we have to do something for misinformation and disinformation. Let's use the IT rules. However, all throughout the consultation of 2 years, what we saw was very little clarity about what they were trying to do. Every time the government has said that they respect privacy and they don't want to break end-to-end encryption. But in the same breath, they also say that give us the information about who wrote that message. I wish I had better clarity about what the long-term game here is. They've been sitting on the data protection bill for now years and nothing has been introduced. They also banned the Chinese apps when there were skirmishes on the border between India and China. The only few things I can at least deduce is that there is a very deep desire to control the free flow of information and the narrative. So that part definitely I have seen all through, that they really want to control who gets to say what, whose voices are amplified and whose voices are heard. That is pretty clear. The second part is there is a big discussion and also a desire amongst Indian tech community that the government should use the regulation to make it more suitable for Indian players over the foreign players. We've watched this for a very long time. There is an envy amongst the Indian tech community. It is led by some old billionaires themselves, but others as well, where they have said, look at China. They kicked out all these American platforms. Why shouldn't you also do something? And a lot of regulation is being used for that. I think the American platforms have also hedged their bets by investing in Reliance Jio for that matter. And they are also understanding that there is something like that which is upcoming. So those two things are clear, the desire to control the information and doing something for the local companies. And I think the second part is not such a bad thing because we want more competition. We also want our local players to be operating there. But you can't have different rules to apply to the local players and have different rules for the American players. You have to have an even playing field. That is where the government loses the plot on the second one. And even people who want to support, they lose it. The other thing I would say is that I wish they understood, which unfortunately I'm not watching at all. And I would really like that India has the tech talent. There's a big hole in the market, the worldwide market, where people are vying for products which protect their privacy, which also don't have this cesspool of all kind of nonsense and harassment which Twitter or Facebook have become, but a different kind of decentralized social media. And India can do that. But we don't see the investment flowing there. We don't see the investment in research and development in AI. We don't see that kind of support for the business where products can be made and then everybody is offered around the world that these are your alternatives. You can leave these American platforms and come on our platforms. That we are not watching. But I don't have a very substantive, structured answer for this, considering that there's a lot of ad hoc stuff which comes out from the government. So that's all I have to say.
Well, you said a lot, Mishi. You've really given a lot of clarity and all that in a very straightforward way. I mean, as a now I'm taking out 2-3 hats simultaneously, as a citizen and user, as a member of part of the journalist community and a digital platform, plus as an observer of what's going on in terms of freedom of expression, civil rights, really. I mean, it's all part of the same thing. I think that there are two strains in what I think, for whatever it's worth, is A, that the government has designs to bring information, free flow of information to in control. Because it means freedom of information really in the government's eyes means criticism of its policies. And the second thing is I have somehow faith in the bureaucracy to bungle things. And rarely to come up with anything cogent. Now it's up to the courts to really see it that way. There are mixed signals there in general in the last few years, but still, I mean, at the end of the day, strangely, we are all in it together.
Yeah.
Citizens, large companies, smaller platforms, news platforms, independent platforms, not that we are joining them, but we are all in the same boat. And social media. I think we'll see in the next 2-3 years, as the elections come closer, as this government gets more confident in a way, also desperate. And you've given us the framework to understand, plus a lot of the details. And I'm glad to see that your organization, as well as a few others who have come up since 2008, are doing their best to bring these things to the notice of the public and to the government. So thank you very much for joining us, Mishi. This was a really helpful interview, and I hope you have success for our sake. That was Mishi Chaudhary, lawyer and fighter for internet rights. She just explained some of the successes they've had and how she sees what is unfolding in India vis-a-vis the IT rules. We'll be back next week again with another guest and another edition of the Wire Talks. So thank you very much for listening. You can check out this podcast and other interesting ones on the Wire website, the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever else that you get your podcasts. Goodbye from me, Siddharth Bhatia, and the Wire Talks podcast team.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week. Thank you so much to Cred, CET, and Global Victoria. Without you guys, this thing would not be possible. So, on the note, Maruk Inayat gives us an overview of the potential Twitter ban in India. On this round is on me. Gauri Devi Dayal was joined by actor-producer Poorna Jagannathan to talk about her career in Bollywood, Hollywood, and theatre. She talks about the upcoming season of the show Never Have I Ever. On Cyrus Says, we had legendary musician Usha Uttup. She took us through her journey and shared her experiences as the unconventional musician. In the second installment of the Father's Day special on Akla Station Adulthood, Ayushi has a candid conversation with her father, Siddharth Amin. On the Global Victoria Tech Talks podcast, we showcase some compelling new tech stories coming out of Melbourne. Whether it's from the buzzing gaming industry or the robust edtech sector, Victoria is increasingly becoming a hub of emerging technology. And we talk to some thought leaders and industry legends about the same. Catch all the action from the World Test Championship on the Edges and Sledges podcast. For our Hindi listeners, we have Khel Niti, which goes live on YouTube every morning. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Feeling overwhelmed, anxious, struggling with too many obstacles, don't know where your life is headed? Well, if you are dealing with one or all of these, tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast, because in each episode, I share a life lesson, a life hack, a pro tip that can help you get your life back on track. All episodes are available on the IBM website, IBM Podcast app, or wherever it is that you get your podcasts from.